Hello everyone, my name is Rafal and welcome to my vlog. So today's vlog will be slightly different, and this is going to be something which probably you guys don't expect from me, but I've decided to do a little bit of tech review. And this is because last Saturday the camera store put together a very interesting event where they invited the rep from Nikon, and he did like a small event where he do like a little presentation about the new mirrorless cameras from Nikon. And typically I don't go to those kind of events, but this time, because first of all I'm a Nikon shooter and I'm very interested in their cameras and whatever they produce, so that was some kind of very interesting opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about these cameras. There's a lot of stuff online nowadays, but I think that when you can hear some of those information straight from the Nikon rep who can answer all your questions, and they know those whole thing from completely different perspective, I think that was quite interesting for me to, you know, kind of dive into it and kind of learn a little bit more about those cameras. So I've decided to go to that event, and I'm extremely happy, and I just want to say big thank you to the camera store for organizing it. And I can promise that if they're gonna have those events more often, I've decided I'm gonna you know, go to those events, because I was kind of shocked and I was kind of like impressed how much I've learned. And everyone who's following me, you guys probably know I'm not a big tech guy. I don't do any equipment reviews. I'm trying to focus on something different, but this time you know, that was a little bit of a different story. And even though we had really bad weather on that Saturday, I was like, I have to go, I have to check this out. So I went to that event. It was amazing. The presentation was great. I've learned a lot about the new mirrorless cameras, and I'm really happy about that. And I just want to share with you guys my perspective on this new mirrorless camera. So there's a couple of things I want to say before I'll jump into it, because that's something which I think is extremely important. I want to make sure that I'm on the same page with all of you guys, viewers, who's going to be watching this. So everything what I'm going to say is related to headshot photography. I don't want to speak out, you know, on any different genres of photography. My experience is going to be based on headshot photography. And even though I didn't have a chance to do actual photo shoot with this camera, which I'm planning to do very soon, but I had a chance to play a little bit with it, and I'm going to just share with you guys what I like about this camera and what I didn't like about this camera. Before also I want to tell you all those things, I just want to say another thing which in my opinion is extremely important, and this is something which it's something how I purchase my gear, and you know what is important for me, and what I base on my decisions on those kind of purchases. So for me, the main and the most important part is the file and the image. I don't really care about, you know, some of those rings and bells and you know, all those features which, you know, makes your life easier. The most important, you know, thing is the image itself. If I can get even very big and heavy camera which produces the best image on the market, this is the camera I'm going go after, and this is what I'm going to be using, because the image is the most important thing. I don't kind of buy stuff based on the size of the cameras and, you know, all those additional things which they helping you with what you do, but they don't make any impact on the image. So I just want to make sure it's clear, but I want to mention that because this is something which in my opinion is extremely important, and that's how I buy my stuff. I don't know how about you guys, but that's number one priority for me when I'm buying equipment. So let's jump into the mirrorless cameras, and I'm gonna tell you what I didn't like about the new Z7 camera. There's not too many things, but there are, and then I'm gonna share with you guys what I really like about this camera. So the one thing which I didn't really like about the new Z7 Nikon mirrorless camera is the battery life. I'm not sure most of you guys who are shooting Nikon, you know, I was kind of surprised that you are able only take about 330 images on one battery, which is kind of shocking comparing the the new D8, well, the D850 or D810 or D800, where you can take around 2,000 images. So that was kind of bummer in my opinion. I'm sure the Nikon will be working on it, but you definitely need buy right on the get-go another several or couple extra batteries, you know, so you can maintain your photo shoots. On average, I take about 300 to about 600 images, depends on the shoot. If I have a bigger photo shoot, you know, those numbers go even higher. So that was kind of like interesting for me that, you know, this battery doesn't have such a good life. So that was the first kind of thing. The second thing which I didn't like, and this is something which I deeply believe it's a process. The Nikon introduced the new Z mount, which seems amazing. It seems like, you know, that's gonna create another amazing opportunities and new technology for lenses. But it seems for me that the Nikon is not really prepared for the new Z mount. You know, they're still working on those lenses. They just introduced like few of them, which also are not the ones which I'm using. So my favorite lens is 70-200, and they basically said that that lens will be probably ready sometime in 2019. So that's something which I was also kind of like, you know, not well, it was kind of interesting for me that, you know, they probably should have it, but you know, I don't want to kind of try to create some enemies against me, but I wish, you know, they could have that right on the, you know, from the get-go, and they should have that lens. So they introduce the adapter, which, you know, kind of allows you to actually go from the F mount to the Z mount. But this little adapter, in my opinion, is extremely expensive. It's about $300, which creates another cost, you know, for the photographer to kind of, you know, switch to the different lenses. I know it's impossible to shoot on Z mount with the F mount, but this is another item which you have to have it, you know, another little item which you have to carry with you. But again, this is something which it's a kind of a process, and this is transformations from, you know, one system to another, and there's no other way around. But you know, looking from my kind of practical side as a photographer, you know, this is kind of like not something which I would be kind of happy with. So those are the things which I didn't like. So this is not too much, and let's jump into those amazing stuff which I really like. So the list is quite long. I'm gonna fairly quick try to go through it, but there's few things which really impressed me and would definitely make my life easier as a photographer, and I didn't even thought about them before, but when they threw out the presentation, you know, they introduced those things, I was just like quite surprised, and I was like, wow, that would be amazing to have those features in my camera. That would definitely make my life easier. So let me start with saying that the image quality looks amazing. It's pretty much the same 45 megapixel sensor, so the quality looks pretty neat. So that's, again, this is one of the most important part, so I really like that. The second thing which I really enjoyed, and that was kind of amazing for me, is that this camera has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connection, so you can wirelessly tether your camera to your computer, which I think would be amazing and tremendous help for me, because I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I hate having my camera tethered to the computer, especially with all the cables, all the stuff running around. Whenever I have to do that, I do, but most of the time I'm kind of running away from it, because just this is something which I personally don't like. I think it's just a pain in the butt, and you know, if I would have this kind of feature in my camera, that would be amazing, and I would always have my computer with me, and I'm gonna be tethering all the time. That would be definitely helpful. And you know, they already built that in, and I don't know how fast it is, and you know, how fast those files you can transfer, you know, how would that affect the speed of work, but I think that's a good step, and I think the Nikon really thought this through. So kudos for them for having that feature in that camera. The next thing which I really like, and this is also going to apply to headshot photographers, is the eyes tracking. You know, they show some samples and I did some tests, and this whole thing works like a charm. And you know, especially you guys know, the eyes are the most important part of headshot photography, and people move, photographers is moving, and having that kind of little system put in place would definitely help, you know, I'm maybe not saying speed up the process, but you know, getting those shots you know, properly focused on their eyes. Another thing which I really like about this camera, and I know especially with the headshot photography, whenever we're shooting about 170 to 200 focal length, every handshake, everything is kind of, you have to be very careful because that might affect your image. And this camera has already built in this handshake stabilization system. Again, based on what they were showing, this whole thing works really well. Definitely would help me with my shoots, because you know, I don't shoot from tripod, I always shoot handheld. So yeah, definitely would love to see a little bit more about how this whole thing works in reality and how this affects the images. But again, Nikon you know, thought about this through and create that and build that in. So that's very spectacular, and I would like to kind of see this whole thing in action. So another thing which very impressed me was the touch screen. You know, the camera what I'm using doesn't have that. You know, and again, whenever you are able to you know, even like, you know, zoom in and zoom out your image and see how the image looks like, you don't have to run through all those buttons and do all those stuff. So that looked kind of cool and really neat. That would definitely would be something which I really enjoy throughout the shoot. You know, I spoke a little bit about the tethering, so then you would have to see on the computer, but having the ability to kind of zoom in and zoom out your image and then see what you're getting and then all this stuff, that would be tremendous help. So I think that was another kind of interesting feature which I would really enjoy, and I think was really neat. And yeah, I would love to explore this a little bit more. So another thing which really impressed me was the viewfinder, which they called EVF. That was something which, that was kind of the first thing when I grabbed the camera and I looked through it, and I was just like, wow, this viewfinder works like charm. Was pretty clear, very bright. On another note, which, you know, Nikon decided to do, which in my opinion is really cool, and I never even thought about it, is actually you can see the shooting data on your viewfinder. So that's also helps sometimes, because whenever I'm shooting and I need to change something, I always have to take my camera down, you know, scroll, and then just kind of look, you know, on completely different screen. So that gives you a little bit more control, in my opinion, and can definitely you know, kind of control and see what you're getting, what kind of settings you have. So that was quite impressed, and I really think that would be something which would help me with my shoots to kind of have a little bit more control over what's going on, because sometimes whenever you're shooting, you don't really remember all those informations, but just having them kind of at the front of your eye and then kind of controlling this from kind of completely different perspective would definitely be something helpful, and would be something which I would really personally enjoy, because that would give me way more control over the photo shoot. So the last couple of things what I want to mention here, of course, those are the things which they are important, but you know, those are just kind of bonuses. So the one thing is the camera is extremely quiet. Even though I don't really mind when my camera is making noise, I like hearing those clicks and sounds and stuff like that. That doesn't bugs me at all. I know it's a different story when you are, let's say, wedding photographer or you do something else, but for me, this is something which doesn't bug me much. But you know, I was quite impressed how quiet this camera was. So that's something which, again, you know, I would have to kind of get used to it, but that was kind of impressive. And the last thing is definitely something which there's a lot of discussion about it. is the size. So very compact, you know, easy for travel and all this stuff. I like to kind of feel my camera in my hand, so the size doesn't really matter for me much, but for the traveling purposes that would be definitely a bonus, right? So I think they still have to kind of figure out which directions they want to go, but for me, this camera held in my hands really well. The grip is designed very well, so that make a huge of a difference. But again, you know, the size doesn't matter. And the last thing what I want to say, and I know there's a huge discussion, is about this that the camera has only one card slot. For me, I don't really care, and it doesn't really matter for me. I know there is a huge fuss about it. Honestly, within my 15 years of experience shooting, I had maybe one issue with my card. So you know, like I don't want to say that, you know, it's for some photographers extremely important, but if you have that ability to tether your camera wirelessly, and then you can shoot on one card, I don't think that should be big of a problem. But again, depends on what you're doing and what you're shooting. But for me, I didn't have these issues, and knock on the wood, I won't have those issues, but I don't think that's gonna be big of a deal. So that's kind of my review. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know there's more stuff into it. I know whenever I'm going to be able to get this camera on my shoots and kind of test it properly, then I'll definitely give you the full review and full feedback, how the camera performs, what kind of images we got, and how the files look like. But that was just the kind of the first impression of having this camera in my hands. And again, I want to say a huge thank you to Camera Store for inviting me. That was extremely nice of you, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm really happy with the stuff what I've learned. So I hope you guys like this review. I know there was not too much technical stuff, but that's just the kind of based on the headshot photography experiences. So thank you for watching. Stay tuned, and I'll chat with you guys very soon. Bye bye.